You're watching Mirror 7 News. Stay informed, stay ahead for more news.
The European Union has finally reached an agreement on its climate targets for 2040, but not without compromise. After intense negotiations that stretched late into the night, environment ministers from across the EU settled on a watered-down version of their emissions reduction plan, just days before the COP30 climate summit in Brazil. So what exactly was decided? The EU's new goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 90% by 2040 compared to 1990 levels. But here's where it gets a little complicated. That 90% figure isn't entirely domestic. Member countries will now be allowed to offset part of their emissions by purchasing foreign carbon credits, meaning they can pay other countries to cut pollution on their behalf. This flexibility effectively brings the real reduction closer to 85% once those credits are factored in. This decision, though seen as a compromise, was essential to prevent the EU from arriving at the COP30 summit empty-handed. The European Commission had originally pushed for a stricter target, one that limited foreign credits to just 3%, in order to keep the EU's path to net zero emissions by 2050 intact. But several nations, particularly in Eastern Europe, raised concerns about how tougher climate measures could hurt their industries and economies. To balance things out, ministers also agreed on an interim goal for 2035, aiming for emissions cuts between 66.25% and 72.5%. These targets are not legally binding yet, but they set the tone for the next decade of climate policy. Additionally, the launch of the EU's new carbon market for heating and car emissions has been delayed by a year, now expected in 2028, as part of efforts to ease the transition. Danish Climate Minister Lars Agard summed up the sentiment by saying that setting a climate target isn't just about numbers, but about balancing ambition with reality. He emphasized the need to protect competitiveness, social balance, and energy security while pursuing these goals. Still, not everyone was on board. Countries like Poland, Slovakia, and Hungary opposed the final deal, arguing it could harm industrial competitiveness. Others, including Belgium and Bulgaria, abstained. But with enough support from a majority of EU states, the deal passed, ensuring Europe presents a unified, if somewhat diluted, front at COP30. Critics argue that allowing countries to buy their way to emission cuts undermines the spirit of genuine climate action. Scientists had warned that relying on foreign carbon credits could divert investment away from Europe's own green transition. Yet supporters see the compromise as pragmatic, a necessary middle ground between environmental ambition and economic reality. With this agreement, the EU avoids the embarrassment of arriving at COP30 without a plan. But it also highlights a growing tension between climate leadership and political practicality. The coming months will show whether this softer target still keeps Europe on track toward its ultimate goal, achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Stay subscribed for more videos.